Friday afternoon, 3:17 p.m. I pulled into my driveway with a bag of groceries and a tired smile, just milk, snacks, and a few things for dinner. It had been a long week, and all I wanted was to check on my kids and relax for once. But the second my eyes landed on my front door, my heart stopped. A thick, heavy-duty chain, the kind used for construction sites, was wrapped around my door 3 times and secured with a massive padlock. A bright orange tag dangled from it like a warning sign. I froze because I knew what this meant. My 8-year-old twins were inside the house alone, the very first time I had ever left them alone, just 20 minutes while I ran to grab milk. And now they were locked inside. I dropped everything. The groceries exploded across the porch as I grabbed that chain with both hands and yanked. The metal sliced into my palms, my breath shook. Then I heard it. "Mommy!" My daughter's terrified voice came through the door, followed by my son crying, "Oh, we can't get out! Mommy, please!" My stomach flipped. The deadbolt was engaged. The chain was triple looped. The tag read, "HOA violation, immediate compliance required." A wave of rage hit me so hard I almost screamed the siding off the house. I shouted Karen's name loud enough to wake the entire neighborhood. And if you're wondering how this nightmare started, well, let me take you back 48 hours. 48 hours before Karen locked my children inside our home, everything had still felt fixable. Annoying, yes. Exhausting, absolutely. But manageable. Moving to Willow Creek had been my attempt at a fresh start after the divorce. A quiet neighborhood, decent schools, somewhere my twins could finally breathe again. The only thing I hadn't counted on was the HOA and the woman who ruled it like a dictatorship. Her name was Karen Whitmore. Everyone in the neighborhood whispered about her, but no one dared confront her. She was in her 50s with a sharp platinum bob and clothes so neatly pressed it looked like she ironed them while wearing them. She carried her clipboard everywhere like some kind of weapon, and if she caught you committing even the tiniest violation, she'd strike with fines faster than you could say appeal. My first week in the house, she fined me $150 because my trash cans were out 12 minutes past 9 a.m. 12 minutes. She claimed it disrupted the visual harmony of the street. Last month she tried to tow my car because one tire was 2 inches over the driveway line. Nobody questioned her because she wasn't just the HOA president, she was also the treasurer, the secretary, and the head of every committee. She basically ran Willow Creek like her private kingdom. Wednesday night I came home from a long hospital shift to find a neon pink notice taped to my door. Final warning, holiday decorations exceed maximum allowable wattage. Must be removed by 6 a.m. Friday or property. Will be secured per HOA bylaws. All we had were 2 small light-up reindeer on the lawn. My kids loved them. Nothing bright, nothing loud, just 2 little glowing decorations, trying to bring a bit of joy into our new life. But after a 14-hour shift, I completely forgot to take them down, and that apparently was the biggest mistake of my week. Friday morning, I stepped outside and saw the reindeer smashed across my driveway. Not broken, destroyed. Someone had stomped them until the plastic cracked and the wires twisted out like veins. Another note lay beside them, non-compliance noted, further action pending. I assumed it meant another fine, maybe another obnoxious note. Annoying, frustrating, but familiar. I had no idea further action meant physically locking my children inside my own home as punishment. When I returned home from the grocery store that afternoon, the chain was already in place, and right as I was trying to pull it off with bleeding hands, I saw her. Karen. She came strolling down the sidewalk like she was taking a pleasant walk, her white sneakers matching her smug smile. She waved the HOA master key ring in her hand like she was jingling a toy. "Good afternoon, Melissa," she said sweetly. I did knock, but no one answered, so I secured the property for the safety of the community. I exploded. I screamed that my kids were inside, that she had trapped 2 8-year-olds, that this was illegal, dangerous, insane, and she just rolled her eyes and said, "Don't be dramatic. They have air." My son has asthma. She knew that. She had complained about my excessive medical deliveries more than once, but she didn't care. Not then, not ever. People started emerging from their houses, phones recording, some whispering to each other. I dropped to my knees talking to my daughter through the mail slot while dialing 911 with shaking fingers. Karen stood behind me, arms crossed, telling everyone I was overreacting and breaking community rules. When the police arrived, everything happened fast. They took one look at the chain, heard my kids crying, and immediately ordered her to unlock the door. She started babbling about bylaws and authority and private property, but one officer had already grabbed bolt cutters. Within seconds, the chain clattered to the ground and the door burst open. My kids ran out crying, grabbing me like they thought I'd never come back. Karen kept arguing until the officers finally snapped. They turned her around, handcuffed her on my front lawn, and placed her under arrest for child endangerment and unlawful imprisonment. The entire neighborhood watched in stunned silence. Karen's mouth opened and closed like she couldn't understand how her own rules didn't protect her. As they walked her to the cruiser, she turned her head just enough to glare at me and whispered 3 words that made my skin crawl. "This isn't over." She was right. I had no idea how bad it was about to get. The moment Karen was taken away in handcuffs should have felt like justice. A release, a breath I had been holding for months, but the truth was I felt sick. Not because she was arrested, but because of the look she gave me right before the cruiser door shut. A look full of cold, calculated hatred. A look that said she wasn't beaten, just interrupted. That night, the twins refused to sleep in their bedrooms. They clung to me so tightly I could barely move without one of them waking up in a panic. I kept telling them they were safe now, that the police had taken Karen away, that nothing else would happen. I believed it for all of 5 hours. Then my phone started vibrating nonstop. At first I thought it was the hospital. I was supposed to work a night shift and had called in sick, but when I unlocked my phone, I froze. Dozens of messages flooded my screen, all from unknown numbers. "Rule breaker. Trash mom, we know what you did. You're ruining our neighborhood. I didn't understand. Why would strangers send me this?" Then another message popped up, a photo, a picture taken from my backyard. My twins' bedroom window, a dark silhouette in the corner. The timestamp was 20 minutes earlier. I ran to the security monitor. Every camera, front yard, backyard, side gate, was offline. Not malfunctioning, disabled. Someone had cut the wires cleanly. Someone had stood outside my children's window while they slept. I felt something colder than fear settle in my chest. Karen had been released. I didn't know how, but I found out quickly. By the time I got the kids settled at the kitchen table, another message arrived. A screenshot of a police report. She'd been bailed out at 3 a.m. The name of the person who paid the $5,000 was circled. Her cousin, an attorney, the same attorney she bragged about whenever she threatened residents with legal action. I barely slept. Every noise outside made me grab my phone. Every creak of the house made the twins jump. Morning light didn't feel like a new day. It felt like another warning. I tried to keep things normal. I made breakfast, packed lunches, tried to convince myself the messages were from random HOA supporters who didn't know the truth. But then the neighborhood group chat, one Karen moderated, began filling with more photos of my home. My trash can zoomed in, my holiday lights, even a picture of me in my hospital scrubs with a caption that made my blood boil. "Working late again. Hope the kids are safe." The twins saw it accidentally. My daughter burst into tears, asking why people hated us. My son asked if Karen was watching us right now. I didn't have answers. I kept them home from school. I called work and said I wasn't coming. I thought keeping my children close would keep them safe. That was mistake number 2. At 10:17 a.m., a massive tow truck rolled up in front of the house. The kind they use for buses. The driver stepped out, wrote something on a clipboard, and hooked my car like he had been waiting for this moment all morning. I ran outside barefoot and asked what he thought he was doing. He handed me the paperwork without looking at me. HOA Lyon, unpaid fines, vehicle removal authorized. I flipped through the papers. My fines had somehow tripled overnight. Every violation I'd ever received had been adjusted with new fees, added interest, invented charges. The total was over $14,000, all approved under Karen's signature while she was still in custody. It made no sense. It wasn't possible. But the driver didn't care. He told me quietly that Karen had done this before, that she had a pattern, that she always won. When he drove off with my car, the kids watched through the front window, faces pale with fear like something terrible had just been taken from us. I was still on hold with the non-emergency police line when the doorbell rang. A man in a cheap suit stood there holding a stack of papers. Process server. He handed me an envelope without saying a word. When I opened it, my knees almost buckled. Emergency HOA meeting tonight, 7 o'clock. Agenda item number 1, foreclosure vote for 249 Willow Creek Lane. My home, my children's home. All because Karen claimed I was a danger to the community. Foreclosure in 8 hours. I didn't even think that was legal. The twins stood behind me, clutching each other, watching my face fall apart as I read the notice. I forced a smile for them, even though my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the paper. I told them I had to go talk to some grown-ups. I called my mother and begged her to come over immediately. When she arrived, she took one look at the children's faces and knew something was horribly wrong. Before I left for the meeting, my daughter grabbed my hand and whispered, "Don't let her take our home, Mommy." I promised I wouldn't, but I didn't know how I was going to keep that promise. The HOA meeting started at 7 sharp, and I arrived half an hour early. My stomach was a tight knot, my hands still shaking from the chaos of the morning. The twins were safely with my mother, but I could barely think about them without my chest tightening. Walking into the community center, I was greeted by the same unnerving aura that always surrounded Karen. She was already there, sitting at the head table like a queen on a throne, clipboard in hand, bright pink nails tapping impatiently against the wood. Her smile was sharp, polite, but fake, a practiced mask of superiority. Neighbors whispered as I entered. I could hear them questioning, speculating. Most had seen the videos of the chain on my door. Most had seen the chaos unfold, but no one dared speak. Karen had silenced them through fear, intimidation, and her obsessive control over the HOA. She began the meeting immediately without any preamble. "We are here to discuss community safety violations, enforcement procedures, and urgent corrective actions," she announced. Her voice carried across the room, commanding attention. "Let's start with the matter of 214 Willow Creek Lane." She glanced directly at me. My chest tightened. I stepped forward, prepared to defend myself, to speak calmly and logically. But I felt her eyes drilling into me, trying to break me before I even opened my mouth. "Your home has repeatedly violated HOA bylaws," she said, flipping through her notes. "Unauthorized decorations, non-compliant trash placement, obstruction of driveway lines, and most alarmingly, failure to provide HOA access for emergency inspection." She paused, letting her words hang like a noose. "These violations pose a direct threat to community safety and harmony." I took a deep breath. "Karen, none of these claims are accurate. Every time I've received a notice, I've either complied or responded with documented proof that my property is within legal and state regulations. My children's safety is not a violation, and my driveway and trash cans are not a danger to anyone. You are overstepping authority." A few heads turned. A couple of neighbors nodded. But Karen wasn't done. "We have records of repeated non-compliance," she said, "and this board has the authority to act in the best interest of the community. Foreclosure is a last resort, but it is legally permissible under our enforcement policies." I felt my blood run cold. Foreclosure, over petty rules, over actions I had taken responsibly, over a woman's personal vendetta. I glanced around the room. Faces of neighbors reflected a mixture of fear and disbelief. None of them had ever seen her confronted like this. None of them had ever seen her challenged with facts and evidence. "I have permits," I said firmly, producing the binder I had carried. "Every issue you're raising has been addressed legally. My decorations were within local codes. My driveway was never unsafe, and you have no right to endanger my children by locking me out or issuing illegal fines. You are abusing your authority." Karen's lips tightened, her fingers curling around the edges of the clipboard like a lifeline. "Your tone is inappropriate," she said. "The board will consider your response, but the foreclosure vote proceeds as scheduled." I realized she had already orchestrated the entire scenario before I even walked in. The meeting was just a stage, and she was the director, everyone else unknowingly playing their parts. My mind raced. I had to act fast. I requested that the minutes of the meeting reflect my objections, that all evidence I had collected be entered into the record, and that a copy be sent to the county legal authorities for review. Karen resisted. She argued, interrupted, and even tried to manipulate the secretary into delaying the documentation. But I remained firm. I spoke clearly, concisely, and with every ounce of authority I had. For the first time I saw cracks in her composure. She was no longer smiling. Her perfectly controlled demeanor faltered, and in those moments I realized she was not used to anyone standing up to her. Not with proof, not with facts, not with courage. By the end of the meeting, the vote was held. Karen attempted to push for foreclosure, but one by one, neighbors spoke up quietly but firmly, questioning the legality, the ethics, and the motives behind her actions. The tension in the room was palpable. Karen's confidence wavered with each objection. She realized too late that her control had limits. I left the meeting exhausted but cautiously hopeful. Karen might still cause trouble, but she had underestimated the power of evidence, community witnesses, and the law. I knew the battle wasn't over, but for the first time I felt that the scales were tipping in my favor. When I returned home, the house felt lighter. The twins were safe, playing with my mother in the backyard. I hugged them tightly and whispered promises of protection, and for the first time in days I felt a small measure of peace. But I also knew this was only the beginning. Karen Whitmore had shown us her true face, and her obsession with control was far from finished. The next morning, the tension in the neighborhood was almost tangible. I could feel it in the air as I stepped outside, the twins clinging to my legs, their eyes wide from the events of the previous day. Karen's influence extended like a shadow over every mailbox, every lawn, every neighbor's step. Even the air felt heavy with her authority. But I had decided I wouldn't let fear dictate our lives anymore. As I walked down the driveway, I noticed something new. Bright neon-colored notices stapled to trees and lampposts. My stomach sank. Each flyer bore my name and address in bold, angry lettering, labeling me as a community risk for noncompliance and endangering minors. The flyers contained images taken from angles that could only have come from someone peeking into my property. Karen had crossed a line. Surveillance had escalated from simple rules to harassment. I could feel her eyes on me, even if she wasn't physically present. I grabbed my phone, documenting every flyer, every sign, every trespass into my privacy. I called the local authorities to report harassment and potential stalking, but deep down I knew Karen's obsession wasn't something that could be solved with a simple complaint. She had become fixated on control, on proving her authority over every aspect of my life. By noon, my mailbox was stuffed with another wave of notices. Each letter seemed more aggressive than the last, citing violations that didn't exist. One claimed my front lawn's grass height was dangerously inconsistent with community aesthetics. Another stated my mailbox color violated HOA standards. Each notice carried an inflated fine and an ominous warning of legal action if ignored. Neighbors whispered as they walked by, some nodding sympathetically, others shaking their heads in disbelief. A few even confessed that they had received similar notices for trivial infractions, but none had been subjected to harassment on the scale I was experiencing. Karen's obsession with me had clearly become personal. In the afternoon, I noticed a strange van parked across the street. Its windows were tinted black, but the driver seemed to be documenting my property. My heart raced. I grabbed my camera and recorded the vehicle's license plate, then called the police to report suspicious activity. This wasn't just an HOA overreach anymore. It was harassment, possibly stalking. By evening, the situation escalated further. Karen showed up at my door, clipboard in hand, insisting on a compliance walkthrough. I refused, citing my legal rights and the fact that she had already endangered my children. She became visibly frustrated, her calm, controlled exterior slipping. She snapped her pen in half, her voice rising as she tried to intimidate me. "I am the authority here," she said sharply, "and you will comply with all HOA directives immediately. Failure to do so may result in liens, fines, and legal consequences." "I've already complied with every legitimate regulation," I said firmly. "You've crossed the line into harassment and child endangerment. You are not above the law." The tension between us was thick, palpable. I could see her mind racing, her teeth clenched, her hands gripping the clipboard like a weapon. It was clear she had never been challenged in this way. For the first time, I realized her obsession wasn't just about rules. It was about control, power, and dominance. Later that night, I reviewed security footage from the day. My cameras had captured Karen pacing in front of my house, taking photos of the twins playing in the backyard through the windows. She had cut several wires in my outdoor camera system to avoid detection. My blood ran cold. This was no longer petty HOA nonsense. This was criminal behavior. I immediately contacted the local authorities, providing them with the footage, the flyers, and a complete record of her actions over the past months. The response was swift. Officers visited Karen at her home, and after reviewing the evidence, they issued a formal warning and informed her that any further actions against my family would result in immediate arrest. Still, I knew this wouldn't be the end. Karen's obsession was far from over. She had escalated to harassment, invasion of privacy, and threats against my family. The entire neighborhood was watching, and the tension between her authority and the law was building like a storm cloud ready to burst. As I tucked the twins into bed that night, I whispered to them that everything would be all right. But I knew the real battle was only beginning. Karen Whitmore had shown her true face, and I was prepared to fight her every step of the way. The next morning, the neighborhood felt heavy with anticipation, as if everyone could sense that the HOA chaos was reaching a breaking point. I awoke early, the twins still groggy and clinging to me for comfort, their eyes reflecting the fear of the previous day. I knew this was no longer about petty rules. It was about safety, law, and common sense versus obsession and abuse of power. As I stepped outside, I saw her, Karen Whitmore, clipboard in hand, striding down the street as if she owned the entire cul-de-sac. Her expression was a mixture of determination and panic. It was clear she understood the authorities were closing in. I stayed calm, keeping the twins close. Every step I took was documented with my phone, every movement recorded for the record. Within 20 minutes, 2 patrol cars arrived, lights flashing but silent, officers moving with quiet authority. Karen froze, her feet rooted to the pavement. I could see the moment she realized this wasn't going to be a usual warning, fine, or bureaucratic threat. This was real accountability. "Karen Whitmore?" one officer asked, his tone calm but firm. "We need to speak with you regarding multiple reports of child endangerment and harassment of residents in your HOA jurisdiction." Her face paled, the clipboard slipping from her grasp. I was only enforcing the rules," she stammered. "It's for the safety of the community." By locking children in a home, by cutting security cameras, by harassing neighbors, the second officer countered. Karen had no answer. Her carefully curated authority had collapsed, replaced by panic and disbelief. Neighbors started gathering along the sidewalks, whispering and pointing. Some cheered quietly as the officers escorted Karen toward the squad car. Her platinum hair, once immaculate, now hung in disarray as she muttered to herself about bylaws and compliance. The officers handcuffed her, the weight of her actions finally catching up. Inside the house, I hugged my twins, tears streaming down both their faces and mine. They had been terrified, trapped, and alone, but they were safe. The officers confirmed that she would be booked for child endangerment, unlawful imprisonment, and harassment. The legal system had stepped in where the HOA had failed. In the following days, the fallout was massive. News of Karen's arrest spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Her reputation, once untouchable, lay in ruins. HOA boards across nearby communities began reviewing their own practices, fearful of the legal precedent. The neighbors who had once stayed silent began speaking out, sharing stories of petty tyranny and harassment that they had endured. I spent hours documenting everything: photos, videos, messages, notices, and flyers. Every detail became part of a record that ensured no one could dismiss what had happened. My twins, though traumatized, began to recover, their laughter slowly returning to the house. The HOA was forced to apologize publicly, to acknowledge that their president had overstepped her authority in unimaginable ways. Policies were rewritten, master keys revoked, and legal boundaries were clarified. Most importantly, my family regained our sense of safety. No longer would a single person's obsession threaten our home, our children, or our peace. As I looked out at the cul-de-sac one evening, watching the sun set over a quiet neighborhood finally free from tyranny, I felt a deep sense of relief. The chaos had ended, but the lessons remained. Power without accountability is dangerous. Obsession without limits is destructive. And the law, when followed correctly, can protect those who are vulnerable from those who abuse authority. Karen Whitmore's reign of fear was over, and my family could finally breathe again. For the first time in months, the driveway was quiet, the twins were safe, and our home, our sanctuary, was truly ours.